Paul Kuharsky covers the Titans. You can follow him at Paul Kuharsky NFL, PaulKuharsky NFL. Paul joins us now. Paul, what's up, man? Thanks for making some time for us.
Good to be with you.
Appreciate you.
Let's get up to speed on all things Tennessee. You know, Washington had been on a run of division games, and we know the division so well. But the Commanders and the Titans don't – honestly, I bet the Commanders and the Titans have never played. I think the last time these two teams played, it was Redskins in Nashville when DJ Swearinger went nuts in postgame.
Sounds right. But I've got bad institutional memory on such things.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, that's not. They played as the football team when De'Ami Brown caught those 2 touchdowns from Carson Wentz. That was only a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Regardless, they're playing on Sunday. Tennessee obviously struggling, but damn, they looked good last week. Get us up to speed, please.
Well, last 3 weeks, Will Levis came back from a shoulder injury that held him out for 3 games. Mason Rudolph played. So these last 3 weeks have been against pretty tough defenses for a bad football team, the Chargers, the Vikings, and the Texans. And, the story of this season for the Titans is really Will Levis. Can he be a guy that they move forward with? And in the last 3 weeks, he's been a much better, steadier quarterback. Bad pocket presence. They've got a shaky offensive line, particularly on the right side. He's taken 20 sacks in those 3 games, which is a nightmare number. But he's thrown 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and he's thrown for almost 250 yards a game in those 3 games, which is a really solid number for Tennessee, which is really about Tony Pollard and the run game. And a defense that's pretty stingy yardage-wise, though it doesn't do very well at sacking the quarterback or taking the ball away. Awful special teams here, nightmare. If the Commanders have anything up their sleeves or any kind of return game, they should be able to do things there. But Titans very encouraged after the win over Houston and feeling like maybe they could start to string something together. They haven't won back-to-back games in 2 years.
Wow.
What would you say is it run first or pass first offense?
No, it's run first. It's really, despite Brian Callahan coming in as passing guru and a quarterback guy, it's a lot like Mike Vrabel's offense. Run the ball and look for play action opportunities off of that. Now Levis is starting to hit some big pass plays, which is good. They had 2 really good sustained drives in Houston, 89 yards, 95 yards. But most of the time when they have to drive the ball a distance, they're going to take a sack that kills a drive, or they're going to commit a penalty that kills a drive.
Talking with Paul Kuharsky, covers the Titans down in Nashville. You can follow him at Paul Kuharsky NFL. So, I mean, clearly Tennessee is struggling. The record tells you that at 3-8. The decision to get rid of Vrabel was a pretty surprising one, I would say, at least on a national level. I don't know if it was different locally. At 3-8, and still, I would say Levis is a question mark, or are folks happy Vrabel's gone and they're trying to reset that thing?
No, generally not. I mean, I think the consensus is, and certainly my opinion is, given this roster, Mike Vrabel would be doing much better with it. Though I don't think, they would have brought in the same variety of guys with Mike Vrabel. He could be a tough guy to deal with. And didn't necessarily see eye to eye with the general manager, Rand Carthon. He had way more stripes, though, and had a bad roster the last couple of years. They finally got out of salary cap trouble, had money to spend, went on a free agent spending binge, and brought in a couple guys via trade. And that hasn't really panned out. Pollard's panned out. Calvin Ridley's panning out after a shaky start. But L'Jarius Sneed's on IR. He's going to miss at least 9 games. He didn't play well after they traded a 3rd round for him. Chidobe Awuzi's just coming off into his practice window after a long time on IR. Lloyd Cushenberry's out for the season. Condre Diggs is out for the season. They didn't find a right tackle, and they're a mess over there. So they spent like $250 million on free agents and haven't really gotten, the team, you guys know it better than anybody, the team that wins March usually doesn't win in the season, and the Titans have certainly been representative of that. Brian Callahan, this team has taken a while to gel, and I'm not going to say he's not going to make it as a head coach, but it's been a slow start for sure. And the Titans, maybe they'll be like Detroit. Dan Campbell had a very slow start, but they don't have the draft capital that the Lions had.
Yeah. It's interesting there. I got to ask specifically about the Titans defense, right? Commanders play the Titans on Sunday, taking a look at what Tennessee brings to the table in this game. I don't know that I've ever seen a disparity as large as this. They're 27th in the NFL in points allowed, and yet the Titans are second in yards allowed. I mean, that is it's crazy. I mean, is Levis throwing picks at his own 5-yard line all the time? How does that disparity come to pass?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of things. So he's thrown a few pick sixes. They've given up a few special teams touchdowns. And then the special teams returns are putting opponents in short yardage situations, and some turnovers have put teams in short yardage situations. So the defense doesn't have to defend a long field. So the yardage number is kind of pretend. Then they don't turn the ball over and they don't sack the quarterback. So the yardage number is kind of inflated, and the points number is kind of inflated in that special teams and offense have given up some of those points. So the defense is a solid unit, but it doesn't force turnovers. It doesn't sack the quarterback. And lately it hasn't been as good in the red zone. But it plays a lot of short fields also, which accounts for some of the yardage stuff. It's a year away probably from being a really good defense. It needs an edge rusher, and it needs to be healthier.
What you call the offense, the strength of that team?
Would I call it what? Sorry?
The offense, the strength of the team.
No, the defense is still the strength of the team. The offense, just on the offensive line problems alone, is a big problem. They average 17 points a game. They just scored 30 for the second time this season, which is judged in Nashville as a miracle.
It doesn't sound like, I mean, despite coming off the big win in Houston, and just from what I've read this week, that maybe that was an even bigger deal for ownership because of the organization's ties to going back to Houston. It sounds like this thing's kind of a mess down there in Nashville. Is that accurate?
I think the season was going to be judged on how things progressed over the course. I mean, there was a scenario where they got good quickly, right? Any new coaching staff has that chance. But I think more realistic people thought, if they steadily got better, it could be viewed as a progress season, and then next year would be the year to go bigger. And there's a chance here. They got a much softer schedule the rest of the way. Washington and Cincinnati, their toughest two remaining games, and the rest of it's division. So they've got a rematch with the Colts, who beat them. They've got 2 games against the Jaguars, probably the worst team in football, and a rematch with Houston. So they could do some damage in the division. They could go on a crazy run here and make some noise. But they've got opportunities to win some games, particularly against teams they're familiar with in the division. At the same time, the way they surprisingly beat Houston, the Jaguars could surprisingly beat them, with there not being such a giant gap there in their results so far.
Right. Talking with Paul Kuharsky here. You can give Paul a follow at Paul Kuharsky, Kuharsky, covers the Titans. What is the path? Listen, there was a time where Washington looked like a real contender to go deep into the playoffs. Now they're riding a 3-game losing streak, and some of the numbers don't look great. They can't get off. They can't stay on the field offensively. They can't convert third downs. Their run game's taking a big hit. They've got some injuries to deal with. What is the path for a Tennessee win this weekend?
I think effective running by Tony Pollard, supplemental play action, and some big shots from Will Levis so that they don't have to drive the field that much. Typical safe turnovers. They're going to have to stop Jaden Daniels from running. They don't do very well against mobile quarterbacks. And maybe keeping their inside linebackers out of coverage situations. Washington would be wise to go after Kenneth Murray, who's not a good coverage backer. And Jerome Baker's taken over that second role, who they acquired in a trade from Seattle. And he didn't have a very good debut as a starter last week. So if they could cover up for those guys, that would help them. Eckler could be a problem in that regard.
I don't think he'll be playing, but you never know.
Yeah.
It's going to be – this is an interesting one. I am curious. Washington has a habit of having a lot of away team fans show up. Are you expecting a bunch of Titans fans at Northwest Stadium on Sunday?
They've got a decent small group that travels, but in Houston, it was the smallest group of Titans fans at a Texans game that many of us could remember. So, maybe people planned, but I suspect, knowing that it's not a great stadium to visit, and with it being Thanksgiving weekend, I'm hard pressed to see it.
I tend to agree with you there. And it's kind of a rebuilding season.
Not super far.
Have you gotten to know Bill Callahan at all, coaching down there? He was here for a long time.
A little bit, yeah. Really good guy, as you know. I think people here expected bigger results quicker. Left tackle J.C. Latham, who was their first-round pick, he obviously had a big hand in, and he's been quite good, though he had a bad game against Houston. Peter Skoronski, last year's first-round pick, the left guard, getting better. They lost Lloyd Cushenberry, the center. But the right tackle, they've had kind of four guys that they've just kind of rotated through, and they all stink. Sadiq Charles, a guy you're familiar with, screwed them by retiring.
Has Sadiq stayed healty down there?
No, he retired during training camp, which was
That'll do it.
Did he?
big screw, and left them in a little less flexibility and a little more of a hole. But he hasn't worked a miracle with the right tackle here. Not that he's had much to work with. So, next year will be more of a tell with all these guys 1 year in his system and him having a hand in drafting or signing a free agent for that right tackle spot, which, listen, they drafted Isaiah Wilson like 4 years ago. He played 4 snaps and was a disaster from Georgia. Then they chased with the second-round pick the next year. Then they chased with the third-round pick the next year. They've invested amazing capital in right tackle, and they don't have one.
Kind of sound like what we used to
Wow. Yeah, man, that is significant. Well, Paul, it sounds to me like you think Washington should win this thing.
Like I said, the Titans haven't won back-to-back games since Denver and Green Bay about this time 2 years ago, and then they went on a 7-game losing streak. So I'll believe they win 2 games in a row when I see them win 2 games in a row.
There you have it.
Wow.
Well, Paul, thanks very much for your time. We appreciate
you, man.
you joining us.
Good to be with you guys. See you.